Hi, welcome to SD-WHOCon's virtual convention for 2020. I'm your host, David Dawson. Joining me today for our Big Finish panel is Programming Director of SD-WHOCon, John Lias. John, welcome. And
Hello.
Chairman of Big Finish, Jason Haigh-Ellery.
Hello.
And its sixth Doctor Assistant, Lisa Greenwood.
That's it. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for joining us from across the pond.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah.
It's a strange year. You're the first panel for us for our convention, so we're gonna be breaking new ground together here as a group.
If you remember, I'd agreed to actually come and physically be there this time.
Yes,
I know.
we were so excited.
I know. I was excited to go. But
I was particularly excited because the last 2 years, my little group at SD-WHOCon has been the ones doing the Big Finish productions live, and I was hoping I'd get to do one for you guys. But here we are. This is the next best thing, right?
it is. It is. And hopefully next year we'll all be together in real life.
That's the dream. But we will play everything by ear at this point, right?
Yeah,
Pretty much.
Jason, can you tell us a little bit, because not everybody who comes to our convention is fully aware of the entirety of the Doctor Who universe. Can you give us a little breakdown on what it is Big Finish does?
Big Finish is an audio drama producer, and we do the audio adventures of Doctor Who. We also do Torchwood, we do The War Doctor, we do Class, we do lots of other contracts as well, licenses with a lot of different media companies, but our biggest license is Doctor Who, and we've been doing that for 21 years now. And we have a number of the Doctors on board doing in their original roles. So we have Tom Baker, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, Paul McGann, David Tennant. We just announced that we've got Chris Eccleston joining us.
That's so exciting. It's
And then we will see where we go from there, because who knows who will come along next.
Pretty much full house though, right? Who's left out of that
There's
list?
Matt.
We've got Matt Smith.
Smith. How could we
We'll
forget Matt
keep working
Smith?
on Matt Smith.
Yeah.
Capaldi.
Mr. Capaldi himself, Peter Capaldi, the wonderful Doctor.
That'll come around, sure of it.
Well, we'll see. Sometimes it takes a little while. Look at, Chris is coming back, 15 years later. So hopefully it won't be 15 years with Peter, but you never know. They all come back to Doctor Who eventually because it's such an amazing show and it's such a fantastic part to come back to. And for those who don't know what Big Finish do, we do full audio drama. So it's basically television without your eyes. In that we do a full cast acting together. We have music, sound effects, and obviously brand new scripts. They're all new stories. And perhaps Lisa could tell us a little bit more about what it's like working on those stories.
Yeah, of course. What do you want to know?
Well, as an actress, these audio dramas are kind of a classic radio play style format, which has kind of disappeared in popular culture. So as an actress, how do you approach playing the role? Like, are you in studio with any of the rest of your cast, or do you do it individually? How does that all work?
Yeah, so I record at the Moat Studios, and our setup is individual booths. So I'll be in a booth by myself, and next to me is normally Colin, so I can see him through a glass panel, normally being very professional, making very silly faces at me and trying to put me off the whole time. But yeah, it's really fun. It's totally different to acting for screen. Everything is a lot bigger, purely because you're trying to get across purely through your voice, so you need to make it bigger. You end up doing really funny things in the booth. It's quite embarrassing, but
It's
fun.
getting that physicality, isn't it? It's I won't say who, but there's one Doctor who constantly grips hold of his wrist So he's like struggling and so forth, and he will struggle with himself while he's acting, you know.
What's that? You need to give us the goss.
I know, I can't wrong. But you find it very, you've got a very broad character, haven't you? You've got a big character.
Yeah,
You
she's
find that's a lot easier because you don't have to do small things. It's easier to do bigger things on audio.
not necessarily. I think it's fun to go either way, but Flip is a great character to play. I've been playing her for like 9 years now. I can't believe it's been 9 years since I first walked into your studios. And I feel like she's gone on a journey with me. You know, I'm not so dissimilar to a brash London girl. You know, Flip was very brash and in your face in the beginning, and I feel like we've gone on a journey together. So she's a great character to play. Really fun.
It's wonderful to get to have a chance to sit with a character that long, right? Like 9 years, and really kind of develop it.
Yeah, and what the writers have done brilliantly is we have gone on a journey. You know, we started at a point and Flip has these ups and downs. So it's been great to play a character that has all of those different emotions, and yeah, great for me to play, really.
Did you have a lot of experience with Doctor Who before you joined up, Lisa? Were you a fan of the show to begin with?
I had seen David Tennant. That's the first Doctor, so very, very late on. That to me seems early, but that's very, very late on. And I remember thinking he was absolutely brilliant. But that's my first knowledge of Doctor Who. I remember I talked to Colin and I was like, I have to see a picture of you when you did it, and he had the big colourful coat on.
and the question mark on his collar, right?
Yeah, it was, the costumes back then were quite intense.
It's interesting. So Doctor Who ran 26 seasons, correct, before it went off the air, and then they had the TV revival that they tried to do. That's actually my first encounter with Doctor Who, was the TV revival. So Paul McGann is my first Doctor. But then really from 95 until 96 until 2005, there was no Doctor Who. So Big Finish's audio drama started in 99, so a lot of people give Big Finish credit for keeping Doctor Who alive and sustained during those dark times.
Very, very kind of them. And, you know, we were the only game in town at the time, and we were producing new Doctor Who for the fans. But obviously, it was a complete game changer when Russell T Davies came along with his version of Doctor Who. And we were all blown away by it, and it did affect how we produced as well, because we were producing the series very, very, very much the same as it was done during the classic era. And having Russell come along and do something which was faster paced, a little bit more comedy, but also more serious, and which had an edge to it. Really changed how we were doing this as well, especially with what was our present Doctor, which was Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, because at the time we got made an offer to do a BBC radio series for Radio 4 Extra, which was basically to have our own Doctor Who broadcast every week, and they wanted to use Paul McGann, and we had to create a new companion, so we did. But obviously, the general public was very used to the new style of Doctor Who rather than the old style of Doctor Who. So we made them 50, 60 minutes long, and we introduced a new character, Lucy Miller, played by Sheridan Smith, who turned out to be brilliant casting. She's amazing performer. She's gone on to win BAFTAs and Olivier's, and I'm sure she's an actress which Lisa aspires to.
If I had a penny for every time in an audition that someone says I look like Sheridan Smith, you see it. When I was blonde, I definitely could see it. I think we've got similar cheeks.
Yes, you have, yeah.
So if Sheridan ever needs a younger sister, I'm here. I can play that part.
That's it, absolutely. That'll happen. But yeah, we came along when there was no Doctor Who and did Doctor Who. To be honest with you, we thought we'd do 6 productions a year for 3 years, and that would be us done. If we could get to 18, we'd be happy. And now we've done something like 2,500 productions. So it's over the last 21 years. So we're very happy,
That's an amazing run.
It is, and it's been really enjoyable as well. The great thing about audio is it doesn't have the stresses that filming does.
Right.
Because if an actor mucks up a take, you just take it again. It's very quick. There's no resetting everything, getting the lighting done. Lisa's done a lot of telly as well. In fact, she starred with Peter Capaldi, didn't you?
Did, yeah.
It's called The Hour.
I'd say I starred with Peter. I was Nicole. He was the star. It was a show called The Hour. We did 2 seasons. He came in on the 2nd season, and it was just before he got announced as Doctor Who. And do you remember they did this BBC thing where they was announcing him as Doctor Who, and you saw his hand, and that was the only glimpse we had of him.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was him because I saw his wedding ring. I was like, oh my God, that's Peter! But he didn't tell anyone. It was a complete surprise for everyone that he'd got the role.
When did you see him prior to that? When did you finish filming?
The Hour?
Oh, yeah.
It must have been about 6 months. It was his next job after The Hour. He's a great guy though. I saw him at a convention, and I think you was there. And
yeah, I was. Yeah.
And he got us into, what was it, business class or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, he got me into business class, darlings. I loved it. Very, very fancy.
Oh, that's amazing. John, it's been really important to you to have Big Finish be a part of SD WhoCon. Can you tell us a little bit why that has been so important to you to make sure they're included within the programming at our convention?
Oh, absolutely, David. When I became the director of programming, like you had mentioned, Big Finish has this rich history of Doctor Who, which a lot of American Doctor Who fans are seemingly unaware of. I first became exposed to Big Finish when I started going to the Gallifrey 1 convention in Los Angeles every year. And I remember walking up to one of the vendors there and asking them, hey, what are these things? And lo and behold, there was tons of Doctor Who adventures across the entire spectrum, including at the time some of the more recent Doctors as well. So from that point forward, I started thinking about ideas for our convention. What is something that hadn't been done up to that point? And Big Finish was one of the first things that came to mind for me, because we didn't really see much in the way of panels or even productions being done at other conventions. Typically, it would just be Jason or representatives from Big Finish who would do a panel who would talk about what they were up to that year, and that would be about it. So with ours, I approached Big Finish and asked them would they be interested in showcasing some of their audio dramas. We could start with some of the later ones first and move our way up. And then that's when I came into contact with you about being a part of our convention, and that's where the Reader's Theater idea was born with another member of our group named Heather. And so one thing led to another. You got to do a production. Jason was gracious enough to greenlight you being able to do that. We did one last year as well in my second year as program director, and this was going to be our 3rd year doing one. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it, but hopefully in the future we'll continue. But for me, I think the big takeaway here is I want to expose as many people as possible to Big Finish whenever I get the opportunity. Again, these are very wonderful stories, are well crafted. They build on the legacies of all the Doctors. They continue as part of the timeline. And it should be something that we should all enjoy as often as possible. And I'm also a fan of the radio dramas. Going back to the 20s and the 30s, that's when this was television.
Yeah, The Shadow, and those kinds of shows.
Yeah, The Shadow. I mean, who still doesn't hear about Orson Welles' rendition of the War of the Worlds to this day? Of course, we all still do. So why not? Why can't we bring this media back to the fore and have other people enjoy? And in addition, we have actors like Lisa, who now expose us to a whole other set of companions which we knew nothing about. And I think people tend to forget that the TV show isn't the only thing out there. The companions and the Doctor's adventures don't stop and end just with every episode that's filmed. Big Finish builds on all that.
Now, Lisa's an assistant because she's an original run of Doctors sidekicks. The companions are the new Who, assistants are old Who, right?
Companion, right? Or am I assistant?
I would call you a companion because I think assistant is a little bit demeaning, you know.
Well, I'll tell you what, for next year's convention, we'll have a panel where we'll argue this point to nausea.
I think that's a great idea because I've had so many arguments with friends about it.
I think a lot of it comes from the whole John Pertwee era, where Joe Grant became his assistant in the laboratory, if you see what I mean. So, yeah, I like to think of them as friends of Who.
There you go.
Yeah. Friends of the Doctor.
That's the fun thing about the history of Who. It's so deep and so long, and everybody comes into Who at different times, and you know their experience is unique to the moment that they come in, and how far back they allow themselves to learn the history and the lore.
I had no idea how big Doctor Who was.
It's incredible, right?
I had no idea. I remember when I first got the part, and I went to a convention in Barking, and like the guy said to me, "You're going to do a panel. You're going to do a panel. You know, this and that." I'd never done anything like that before, and then I opened the door and everyone started clapping like it was a room full of people. I had no idea what was going on, and I just was ushered up the middle of all of these people. It was quite stressful.
Oh, that's what was going on. I just assumed you were drunk. Because you were
That as well, but.
So how does it feel, Lisa, to know you're part of such a rich history and a long legacy of storytelling?
It feels amazing. You know, I've grown to be a huge fan of Doctor Who, and it feels great to be a part of like the Who universe, and you are like one big family. And every time I come to a convention, you know, I've been to a few in the States, people are so friendly and so lovely, and I'm met with, it's just so welcoming, and it's just great to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It feels great.
You know, John was talking about wanting to make sure that people are aware of these radio dramas, the audio dramas, because it's classic entertainment, right? Like that was the history of man, was storytelling, verbal storytelling for centuries. One of the things that I really enjoy about these audio dramas is the idea that children can listen to them, have familiarity because of the TV show, but then let their imaginations fill in the gaps. And I think that's such a wonderful aspect of these audio dramas. And I want to encourage families who are attending this convention to look into these and listen to them with their families, you know, do it as a communal event where you sit in the room together and listen, like my grandparents did with my father. You know, they listened to The Shadow, and then when I was a kid, my dad, we'd be driving all over the United States, and we'd be listening to those old radio dramas on the radio, and I would sit in the car and just imagine everything.
I feel it's a little bit sad actually that America moved away from drama on radio, whereas we still have it in the UK because public service broadcasting. We have, you know, a soap opera that's been running nearly 70 years on radio.
Wow.
Which is still running and very, very successful today, and has, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not a million, listeners every episode. And we have probably 3 to 4 hours of drama every single day on radio, and it's something I grew up with. And something which, you know, it's one of the other things that people do as an actor in the UK. They do film, they do television, they do theatre, and of course they do radio.
Yeah.
So it's something that a lot of people do. Anyway, sorry, I just thought I'd make that point. It is sad that in America you've lost that slightly.
Yeah.
Back to your original point of introducing children to this universe. So basically, Nick Briggs, the face of the Dalek face, he gave me a secret code, right? And it got me into loads of different audio dramas that Big Finish had done. So I got to listen to loads because he wanted me to review some. And a range that I think is amazing for kids is the Missy. Is it Missy Chronicles, Jason? You'll have to tell me the proper name.
Yes, Missy. It's just called Missy.
Brilliant. So look into that one.
Awesome. Yeah, I love Missy.
Yeah, she's great.
Michelle Gomez is amazing to work with, and we worked with her prior to her being cast in the TV show, and she's so lovely, and I mean she's in a very successful show on Netflix, but she wouldn't.
Sabrina, right?
Yeah. But she makes time to make sure that she can record with us, which is fantastic.
That's lovely. Yeah, I got to meet her here at Comic-Con a couple of years back, and she was so gracious and so lovely with everybody that she interacted with. It was, and that's been my encounter with everybody from Doctor Who I've had a chance to meet with.
But you've never met Lisa face to face. This is the problem, you see. If you ever met her
she's
face
acting
to face,
right now, right?
Oh yeah, no, she's cunning, conniving, and drunk most of the time. So
Does not tell a lie. I have to say, the thing that really impressed me with Michelle Gomez, but she's Scottish. I'm half Scottish, and something that I grew up on as a kid was a drink called Iron Brew. I don't know if you've heard of this drink, but it's basically radioactive and it's orange. And I was sitting at a table with Michelle, and she pulled some out of her bag, and we was in Chicago. I was thinking, how did you get Iron Brews in Chicago? So I was very impressed that she smuggled some Iron Brews in.
Very good.
It's really
Jason, can you tell us a little bit about Christopher Eccleston coming back to the role? Like, how difficult was it to get him to come back?
Well, it's obviously something which we've talked about on numerous occasions. Chris never thought it was the right time. I think there was a big change happened when he started meeting the fans. So just over, I lose track of time. I think it's nearly 2 years ago now. He went to the, it's about 18 months ago, isn't it? Something like that. He went to the London Comic-Con and he met the fans for the first time to talk properly about Doctor Who's experience on there. And they were so supportive. And then he's been to a couple of other conventions in the UK, and then he came to Gallifrey. And I was at Gallifrey, and I asked the organizer to introduce me to Chris. I said, look, I just want 2 minutes just to put a face in front of him and say, look, can I make you an offer? Can we discuss this? And he said, yeah, okay, make me an offer. Because at that point, he wasn't saying he was going to do it. What he said was he would listen to my offer, if you see what I mean.
Right.
And that was a big stage forward. Because previously just been, no, I've left that behind. No, I've left that behind, understandably. It's public knowledge that both sides fell out with each other. And obviously that's between them and nothing to do with us. So we won't go into that. But he's always, when he came back and started doing the conventions, I think he found that love again for the character of the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So this is about coming back and playing the character of the Doctor, and it's about giving something back to the fans that were so warm to him when he returned to talk to them 15 years later. And I think there was a part of him that felt that like he was slightly, wouldn't be remembered and they'd all moved on. But he was a bit shocked to discover that people loved what he did, because he did brilliantly. I mean, it's got to be said, if Chris hadn't done the job he did, we wouldn't be looking at Doctor Who now, would we?
No, absolutely not. Because when Doctor Who came back, as I said, I'd done the TV movie in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
That was kind of my major experience. I had friends who were big Doctor Who fans when I was a kid, but I was never really exposed to it. But my girlfriend in 2005, big Doctor Who fan, and you got to watch this with me. I was like, yeah, okay, we'll sit down and watch it. And Christopher's portrayal of the Doctor was so compelling and so different from what I'd remembered of Doctor Who from the little bits that I'd been exposed to it in the past. I was immediately hooked and interested in what he was doing with the character and
Yeah.
how that character was written. It was so rich and felt the history behind it. And I gotta say, when I saw your announcement that he was coming back to do the audio dramas, I got super excited, because for all intents and purposes, I consider him, my doctor, the one that really made me love Doctor Who. So I'm just delighted that he's returning. John, what about you? Who's your doctor?
I would say that I was first exposed to Christopher when he first came back onto the air. But I would have to say that David Tennant's doctor was the one that really pulled me in. If I remember right, at the time, Doctor Who was airing on the Sci-Fi Channel in the United States, and I think there was a 1-year delay between the start of the series and the continuation. So we didn't get to see Christopher Eccleston's Doctor until a year after it aired in the UK.
I think it was 6 months, but it was a good deal of time.
And so then by that point, they had made the announcement that he was going to be leaving. So then they announced that David Tennant was going to play the role. And I think that's the time when I really started getting into Doctor Who. And I watched all of Christopher's episodes, enjoyed them. And then when David became the Doctor in the Christmas special, that's when I basically said, yeah, I think I'm going to start watching this from now on. And from that point forward, I've just continued to watch. So that's basically how I got involved. And my first exposure to Doctor Who was actually back in college in 1990. It was Tom Baker, because he seemed to be about the only Doctor that got shown on public broadcasts, PBS over here.
Yeah.
So I remember watching this one weird episode, not knowing anything about the show, the history, or anything about this. This guy with long curly hair, this ridiculous looking scarf, and these salt and pepper shakers that were trying to move themselves upstairs but somehow couldn't. And so that was my first exposure to Doctor Who, and it's like, yeah, I don't know about this, but I might give it a try. Unfortunately, I didn't watch it the next week, so that's where it kind of left off until 1999 when they did the movie, and then more appropriately back in 2005, 2006 timeframe.
Jason, when you first started bringing back original Doctors to play their parts, what was it like in the booths when they kind of stepped back into those shoes?
Well, I would say actually at the beginning of this that one of my regrets is unfortunately we weren't early enough to get John Pertwee to join us, because I'm massively older than Lisa. My first Doctor was actually John Pertwee. Having said that, the reason I've got a grey beard is because I work with Lisa, not because I'm old.
He definitely didn't have grey hair when I met him, so it could be true.
True, very true. Yeah, it's a great shame because I spoke a lot to Katie Manning and also to Elizabeth Sladen about John, and they were like, "Oh, he would have loved this. He would have absolutely be doing this all the time, etc., etc." But we started off by working with Sylvester McCoy, Peter Davison, and Colin Baker, who were 3 Doctors that we knew reasonably personally through the fan circuit, and were able to go, "Would you do this?" And they all went, "Yeah, sure, okay, let's do it." And they had formed the bedrock, which became known as the main range, or the monthly range, and then it expanded from there. We got Paul McGann in, then we got Tom Baker, and then we got David, and now we've got Chris, and along the way we got John Hurt for 12 episodes, which was amazing.
Yeah.
I've been honest about it. We were made aware that he was not well, that he had inoperable cancer, and that he was having chemotherapy and so forth, and therefore it could be quite difficult for him. And I'd had the experience of my own father, unfortunately, dying of cancer previous to that. And so we were able to talk about it and say, this is what we'll do, this is how we'll do it to make sure that John's happy, if you see what I mean. It was amazing working with John Hurt. And I'm so grateful he came and did that with us. And the fact that we've actually got another 12 hours with the War Doctor is amazing. And he did one other thing for us as well, and this was literally the last thing he did before he went, which is he recorded The Invisible Man for our H.G. Wells series. And he is spectacular in that, because it is a man who's lost his own humanity because he can't even see himself anymore. And I think there are times when you go through such a difficult battle as battling cancer, where you lose a bit of your own humanity. So he brought that completely to the part, and it is unbelievable. I think, John, you nodded your head that you've listened to it. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he's spectacular in that. Anyway, so we got John back, and a great shame that we were all going to do another series with John, but unfortunately we didn't get the opportunity. But but getting going back now to 1999, when we had those first three doctors at the studio, it was a bit of a pinch you moment for a load of fans getting their doctors back to record some new Doctor Who. It was that at the end of the recording sessions, we'd actually made the first new Doctor Who in 3 years from the movie, but actually in terms of
10 years since the show
being on television as a show with these doctors, and that was very exciting. And now we fast forward 21 years, and we still get excited when we go in there. And I was listening to Out of Time with David Tennant and Tom Baker recently, the final edit, and that's now available. And I was listening to it, and I was just getting goosebumps just listening to the two of them working with each other. And it was like, this is amazing that we get the chance to do this. It doesn't get old. 21 years later, we're still excited about doing this. Hopefully it shows.
I think it does. And I think it's fantastic that in Paul McGann's case, like, you actually got to give that doctor some actual life and experiences that we didn't get to see on TV.
Absolutely. And Paul loves playing the Doctor. I mean, I think there was, again, he's talked about this slightly. There was always this concern that he'd be the forgotten Doctor because he was only on television for an hour and a half. But, he gets recognised as the Doctor all around because of the work he's done with Big Finish. But also he was the Doctor on radio for Radio 4 Extra. So that as well is, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people listen to that.
So I'm gonna share a silly weepy story with you real quick.
So
around the 50th, when Paul came back and did that little short and transitioned into the War Doctor,
yes.
I wept while watching that short, and I got caught off guard by how emotional I got seeing him on screen playing that Doctor, and then I realized. I said Chris Eccleston is my Doctor, but Paul's actually my first.
Yeah.
It was so, I don't know, it was weirdly emotional to get to see him play the part.
It was very exciting. I mean, again, it's a while ago, so I can talk about it, but Paul actually phoned us up and said, should I do this? Because he didn't want to do it if it wasn't if it was going against Big Finish or anything like that. And we're like, no, you've got to do this. And it was like, oh my God. And then Stephen Moffat actually phoned us up from to say, can I just check your companions, please? Because they reel off the audio companions.
Yeah.
And Steve just wanted to make sure he got them all right.
Yeah. So and I recognized it when it happened. I was like, oh my gosh.
So it was like, oh, okay, that's happening then, because we didn't know what was in the script, except we knew that Paul was in there, and we knew the companions' names were all going to be used. So it was very exciting to watch this it was the first new Paul McGann in 20 years where I didn't know what was going to happen. Which was amazing.
Oh, that's incredible.
But it was wonderful.
So in 2021, you guys have a couple of big ones coming. So you have Christopher Eccleston coming back, but you also have Dalek Universe, correct?
Yes, we do. 9-part drama with David Tennant.
Oh, it's exciting.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, during lockdown, David's done a lot of work with us, as you're starting to see. There was an article recently which said that David Tennant won lockdown in terms of being an actor because his wife produced that drama series staged with him and Michael Sheen, and he also did a couple of other things. He did his podcast. I
love his podcast.
Yeah, fantastic. And he did work with us, etc. And he never stopped working. I think the fact he did so much work has something to do with the fact he's got 5 kids. And no matter how big his house is, there's 5 kids in there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I've got to go to work now.
It's a never-ending need for money.
Well, no, I think it's a never-ending need to get out of the room. Come back. I'm coming back for dinner. I'll see you. I'm off to work. Bye.
Oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah, so that's the thing. But yeah, it's been fantastic having him back doing so much. And he's been so supportive of Big Finish over the years, and we actually worked with him 16 times before he actually became Doctor Who. So there was always this assumption that he would come back by the fans, because like, oh, we did all this stuff. He did Cold Hits, he did Peer Pressure, he did all this other stuff, you know, and Dalek Empire. And I never assumed he was going to come back. I would hope that he was going to come back. But there was also a period of time when he needed to go off and do other things, having played the Doctor on television for so long. But when he came back to Big Finish, you know, he was so good at it. You know, it was like he'd never been away. But there we go. It's been exciting. We've had a lot of good fun, and the series he's done with Alex Kingston as well is magnificent. The two of them work so well together.
Yeah,
so well.
Alex Kingston is fantastic.
I rarely get starstruck, but I was with David Tennant. So I went to see him in a play. My friend was in the play. I went to watch him, and then my friend asked me backstage, and I was sitting in like the dressing room area, and he walked in, and I was just a bit like, who's this weirdo? I couldn't really say anything. I was so starstruck. I watched him a show called Casanova just before he got Doctor Who, and I thought it was one of the best things I'd ever seen, and that kind of stayed with me. So it was really cool to meet him.
That's incredible. What's
I remember when he was doing Casanova. Oh,
as well.
he was, yeah. And I was with a mutual friend of ours who'd done a pilot with him for a comedy which wasn't picked up, and so I was chatting with Claire, and we were talking about David being so lovely, and we went, so we just phoned him. So we phoned him up, and he was buying new trainers in Casanova, and I was like, what's that? And he was like, oh, well, because I'm going to be naked in this, so I better get running. So he made me look really fit. I probably shouldn't tell you that story, but there we go.
There you go. SD-Con exclusive.
There you go.
There you go. Don't repeat that. Oh, God.
Lisa, what's coming up next for you? What have you got going on? Have you been David Tennant busy during lockdown?
It's been super quiet. You know, I'm not David Tennant, the wonderful David Tennant. You know, the industry has been super quiet. Everything's shut down.
Yeah.
A few positions have come in recently. I've met a few crazy casting directors, which I thought I'd never meet. I met the casting director that does Game of Thrones, so that was really exciting. Just having meetings, loads of meetings via Zoom. But yeah, it's been super quiet. But auditions are coming through, so that's a positive sign.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. Hey, David, I got a quick question for Lisa.
Go.
For us, again, you know, in America, we're not exposed to a lot of the non-television show companions. Could you tell our patrons who are watching this video a little bit more about Flip and who she is and how you came about to be in that role with the Sixth Doctor?
Yeah, so about 9 years ago, I turned up to Big Finish to do a very, very small part. The character was Philippa Jackson, and she was working behind a cheese counter. When she interacted with the Doctor, I think Daleks came in and she was hiding behind a cheese counter, and that was our first interaction with Flip. And then a couple of weeks later, I got a phone call literally asking if I wanted to be the assistant. It was crazy. It was my first ever audio job. So that was really exciting. And then
Lisa has a very unique voice, though. She's being very posh at the moment, but she does have a very broad, exciting.
Lockdown's changed me, darling. Lockdown changed me.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of The Crown.
Not quite. But
yeah.
you do have a catchphrase, don't you?
What's my catchphrase?
I don't get it.
Oh, I don't get it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Nicholas, he used to have hair when I met him, and now he's just pulled it all out because he's so stressed. He'd tell me something, and if I don't get it, I tell him I don't get it, and I think that stresses him out sometimes.
It no matter what it is, if you know, it's like we know when we've lost her when she goes, I can't get it, I can't get it.
Yeah, it's but Flip, she's typical London girl. She sees aliens and Daleks for the first time, and she's in a state of shock. And then she gets into this random man's TARDIS, which I can't quite believe she does, because she just gets in a random man's TARDIS who does that. And they go traveling around the world and have wonderful adventures together. So, she's a great character.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah, she's a really fun character. She has a lot of debates with the Doctor. They have a lot of back and forth, a lot of banter, and she's not afraid to put her foot down and put the Doctor in his place, which is quite funny when I get the chance to do that.
And what's your relationship with Colin like?
Oh, it's great. Colin, as I said, he's next to me, so we have a great relationship. We get to see each other act. So that's quite important to me, that I can see his face and I can react off that. He's a really, really great character. He has a lot of time for new actors. That's the thing with Big Finish. You've done so many, audio productions. You get to meet so many new actors. And Colin always takes the time to sit down and talk to the new guys, because like anyone, the first day at a new place, you're going to be nervous, and Colin just takes them in, gives them a big cuddle, sits them down and gives them time, and everyone completely relaxes. So he's great like that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And he makes faces at you through the booth.
Constantly. I need a little curtain to get to my desk.
Sounds to me, Lisa, like they all give you a lot of grief.
I mean, they try to make it give them grief, but they are giving me grief.
No, you give us grief all the time.
They all had hair when I met them, and now they haven't. So yeah, maybe I do give them grief. Still falling out due to stress.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your stories and letting us know a little bit of the history of Big Finish. It's been a real honor to have you sit down and talk to us. Hopefully next year, everything goes the way we hope. We can have you guys here and host you in San Diego.
I'd love to.
I've given you the dates for Germany, haven't I? So
yes, you did. And I think there's
so as long as it's not that weekend, I will come any other time.
Yeah, we are.
Right, I need to know, what is San Diego famous for food-wise?
California burritos.
Oh, yeah. I'll be there. Yeah. I'll be there.
Cali burritos. It's like a carnitas burrito with French fries in it.
Okay, so here we go, David. Next year, your Reader's Theater will be the Sixth Doctor. Lisa will star as Flip, and we'll just go from there. How's that sound?
Yes, and I'll take her out for burritos.
There we go. Well, we can include it in the Reader's Theater where they're delivered to the hotel. So.
Perfect. You can pay me in burritos. Love it.
The hotel's nice, but I gotta take her to the beach too.
yeah, that one will be a little harder.
Oh, you're not dating her, you know.
You can't come to San Diego and not eat a burrito on the beach. It's just...
Okay, fair enough.
Amazing.
I may have to chaperone her, you know.
You can come too, Jason.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah. The whole
lot. We'll make sure we have Iron Brew available for you. That's your choice.
When can I come? This sounds amazing.
We're also known for craft beers. Yes, that's the other side of it.
Okay. I can be in San Francisco right now. Oh, San Diego, sorry.
John, before we sign off, SD WhoCon benefits Pegasus Rising. You want to tell us a little bit about that for the watchers?
Yes. Our preferred charity that we like to contribute money to is called Pegasus Rising. It's an organization that helps vets with issues that they have had in serving in the military by using horses for therapy. So we definitely would like to see anybody and everybody go to their website potentially to learn more about their organization and donate either time or money to their cause. It does help out a lot of individuals who are in dire need of it. And it is particularly of importance to our chair, Susan Watson. So we definitely always try to make people aware of that organization that exists. And it is there to help those who need the help.
Fantastic. Yeah. Please visit the website. Again, Jason, thank you for joining us. Lisa, thank you for joining us. And all of you watching us, SD WhoCon virtual convention, thank you for joining us. Make sure you tune in to the rest of our panels all weekend. It's going to be fantastic. Until next time, I'm Dave Dawson. Bye, guys.
Bye,
all right. Take care.
Bye.